Hey y'all, today I want to showcase what I've been cooking over the weekend. I've been theory crafting some stuff for my Upheaval Barbarian. It's not too far off from what I was already using, but we've got some different priorities for some stats, and the Paragon board I went through the whole thing and kind of changed what I was prioritizing. And I'm just going to kind of talk through what I'm going to be trying to use going into the season. Um, Obvious caveat is that if you're watching this before the season 2 start on Tuesday, I can't test any of this or show you any real uh, active gameplay. I mean, I have some clips and stuff from other builds, so I'm not much to really watch for this video, more of a listen kind of thing. I'll have this linked in the description if you do want to check it out yourself, but there are some things I kind of will adjust. I kind of wish I could have some secondary options to pick from just to have it all in one link. But anyway, I'll talk about that stuff. I'll be talking about vampiric powers, stuff I want to be using, things about the skill tree, things I kind of overview stuff about what I want to focus on and stuff that's changed. So, all right, we'll just plow through this as fast as I can. Hopefully it won't take too long. So the main skill setup is going to be very similar with lunging strike and upheaval. Obviously, it's an upheaval build. They did buff the scaling for Upheaval and as well as the damage bonus from Furious Upheaval, so this is just a straight buff, so it's going to be nice to have. We're still going to be focusing on Berserking. This was kind of a bonus that I had all the time in the previous versions of the build, but now that Berserking itself is a multiplicative bonus, and we're actually going to use a Paragon node that got updated to scale your Berserk damage as a multiplier. We want to be Berserking basically 24/7. And to kind of help with that, we are still going to be doing a crit based build. Vulnerable damage is there, but it's not really. We're not really going to build into it. It's just kind of a freebie thing that we can get semi frequently. But critical strikes, at least critical strike chance, is definitely going to be pretty high up there. Mainly just so that combat lunging strike can help us with a very consistent source of berserking, so I don't have to use something like violent upheaval. I went ahead and decided to pick up Iron Skin still for its pretty decent cooldown, and as well, we'll be using it with the Iron Warrior aspect for a source of Unstoppable. There is the vampiric power with Unstoppable. I'll kind of talk about that in a little bit. I'll come back to the smaller passive nodes because those will kind of come into play a little bit later. Gonna be using Deathblow and Steel Grasp still. Warrior's Deathblow for berserking, and then Fighter's Steel Grasp for more berserking. There's a huge caveat to Deathblow, which I'll get to later, but this is going to be my default setup. I'm kind of going over the default stuff, but there's some stuff that I do want to change depending on certain unique items I'll get throughout the season. I do want to try out. I do want to keep using Iron Maelstrom, and I'm kind of 50-50 on Walking Arsenal and Unconstrained. There's a good chance that Unconstrained actually might be the play, but I think maybe for now I'll probably keep Walking Arsenal. I do want some weapon swapping in the build. I still want to at least weapon swap between Lunging Strike and Upheaval, so those aren't on the same ability or the same weapon type for the Barbarian, because there's still some weapon swap stuff that I benefit from. So even if I do end up swapping to Unconstrained, just maybe this is just more damage. I don't know. This is going to be a try it out and see thing, especially since Berserking has been buffed, and so again, I can't test any of this. I just had to go over what I think is going to be working well. And I wanted to have something concrete that I can reference back to and be like, okay, these are the things I want, and this is what I want to try and use, and go from there. For the smaller passives, some previously important passives we don't actually need anymore. For example, I really liked Exposed Vulnerability, but since Vulnerable isn't really a mandatory stat anymore, I don't need to worry about it. So same things like Wallop, so it's like your skill is using bludgeoning weapons, deal increased damage if they're stunned or vulnerable. This is a multiplier, so it's not even like it's bad, because I am using Steel Grasp, which does have Vulnerable. So it's not like this is a bad passive still, but it's not as impactful as it once was. So I've kind of tried to shift things around a little bit, and just to change it up, just to see how it works, really. Again, I really should clarify, this is not me claiming to be this is the best build or whatever, but I'm just kind of going over what I'm going to be using. If you wanted something to kind of look at and think over if you wanted to try Upheaval, but maybe you didn't really know what you wanted to do or what you wanted to focus on. You can use this as reference, and hopefully it works out. I hope it works out. Well, I'll have to make changes to this. I'll probably make changes to this at some point as I go into the season itself. So we used to, like I said, we used to have exposed vulnerability, we used to have wallop, but I've kind of moved some stuff around. So I still have the movement speed from swiftness. I still want the damage reduction while berserking because that's going to be up all the time, and berserk fury generation is going to be up also like all the time. I don't use shouts, or I choose not to use shouts. You could replace Iron Skin with Rallying Cry and put some passive points in the shout stuff, but I chose not to. I ended up going with maybe some additional max life and just the extra damage reduction. Just these last like few skill points are pretty free if you maybe wanted to use put points in something else like wallop or somewhere else. I don't know, but for me, I'm gonna go ahead and try this just for some more damage reduction. But the big thing for me is that Fortify is now going to scale on your max life now. So I think having more max life will actually just be a net gain for the Fortify generation, which we do get from Strategic Iron Skin and from one of the aspects on gear. Speaking of the aspects, we'll just burn through it. A lot of this stuff is pretty similar to stuff I've talked about in the past. Iron Warrior gives us unstoppable damage reduction with Iron Skin. Aspect of Might. This is kind of a toss-up, kind of a filler. This is more of a flex slot, but just extra damage reduction from basic skills, which we are going to be using very often. Got Accelerating on my gloves just for more attack speed. Numbing Wrath is going to be one of our main Fury generation sources. So when I generate Fury above my max, I get Fortify, which is going to be one of the two main sources. I think one of the Vampiric Power should be my other main source of generating Fortify. All right, so this is where things can change up a little bit. So I've always recommended Weapon Master's Aspect for the additional weapon mastery skills have an additional charge. But they have changed Ancient Oath. So this is a big change up in the build that I do want to try out. So they have added a multiplier bonus to Steel Grasp from Ancient's Oath. So enemies pulled by Steel Grasp take up to 30 to 50% bonus damage from you for 3 seconds. So this will apply to any hit. It's not just like my next Steel Grasp or my next whatever or my next Weapon Master skill. It's all my damage for the next 3 seconds after they get pulled is kind of a lot. It's a multiplier, up to 50% multiplier, which could be very big. And if that's what's going to happen, then I won't really have Encroaching Wrath because I do want to try Hellhammer. I could replace Hellhammer and do Encroaching Wrath and still run Deathblow, but I actually am curious to try out a double unique setup with like Hellhammer, Encroaching or Ancient's Oath, and then instead of using Deathblow, I would maybe try using like Leap, for example. This is a very free slot to try something else. Maybe could do Leap, could do a Shout. I don't know, Ground Stomp. Maybe if I want Challenging Shout for some more damage reduction or something. I could give that a try. So I do want to see how this works out and see if that works as well as I think it might. I really do want to try out this multiplier from Ancient's Oath because it seems like it could be pretty strong. And if that's the case, I don't actually really need this very much because Steel Grasp already has 2 charges by default. So ideally, I think I'd actually maybe would want to try like Flicker Step or something. That could be really neat to have a super low cooldown on Iron Maelstrom, as evading through enemies reduces your ultimate cooldown by up to 4 seconds or up to 10 seconds total if you evade through enough enemies. Otherwise, I could just use like a mobility aspect or something like that. So this is kind of the big flex idea is if I run Hellhammer and Ancient's Oath. Because remember, Hellhammer did get buffed, and it's not going to give you ranks to Upheaval. And my gloves are also going to have ranks to Upheaval, so it would be up to +8 total combined. +4 from the gloves and +4 from the Hellhammer. So +8 to Upheaval is a very large source of damage. So I am going to try this out. Luckily, the Hellhammer and the Ancient's Oath both drop from the Beast and Ice, I think is what that boss is called. I think it's in World Tier 4 only, though. So I'll be farming that once I can in World Tier 4 and trying to get both of these and see how well this works out. If Ancient's Oath really doesn't feel as strong as I think it might be, then I'll probably just continue to use Encroaching Wrath and then we'll keep Weapon Master's Aspect, and I'll keep Death Flow. This should still be pretty strong, or at least I'm hoping it will be. It's really hard to tell because we're kind of assuming that the game will be rebalanced properly. Blizzard said they've rebalanced the enemy so that you don't actually feel like it's a nerf, since crit and vulnerable damage are much, much weaker compared to Season 1. But yeah, so I am curious to try this out. I do want to give Ancient Oath a try. Anyway, for my other stuff, I got Berserk Ripping. This is kind of here as a flex spot as well. I'm deciding to use the two-handed axe for more vulnerable damage because, again, Steelgrass does still apply vulnerable. We still are having a decently good amount of uptime on vulnerable. But I'm honestly maybe considering just going back to two-handed sword expertise just to have a consistent source of bleeding so that I don't have to use my, like, you know, basic attack or whatever, or my lunging strike to, you know, proc this. I mean, that should apply to all my hits, though, so if I use Berserk Ripping, I don't need to use 200 Sword Expertise. I just realized I would be, like, double dipping on bleed, which I don't really need. So I think if you are using Berserk Ripping, you can probably just use 200 Expertise, but otherwise, you could run 200 Sword for a consistent source of bleeding, and instead run, like, I don't know, Expectant maybe could be an option. I actually might even consider doing this instead. Just fulfilling my bleed source of bleeding from sword expertise, and I have Expectant, which, you know, I will have. You've been using a lot of lunging strikes just as filler to both generate fury and for things like Expectant. So yeah, this is kind of on the fly adjusting. Again, this is a very flexible thing. I've thought about what I want to do, but obviously I can't really test any of this stuff yet, so it's kind of just messing around on the website and seeing what I think works. Amulet, put Edge Masters. I think any good offensive power would be great to have here. Some other options would be so Edge Masters would be pretty good. Limitless Rage is also an option. Those are two pretty strong ones you could give a try. Those are kind of the two big ones. I mean, there's some other neat stuff here, but for me, it would either be like Edge Masters or whatever the other one I just said, Limitless Rage. For one of my rings, I definitely want the Fury per second while berserking. The other option is going to be the one where you gain Fury generation while you have the Walking Arsenal key passive active. But if I end up swapping to Unconstrained because berserking might be, like, super strong, I think actually berserking is going to be really strong in Season 2, then, you know, if I'm not using Walking Arsenal, then I don't really want to be using this, so I probably will just aim for a Berserk Fury ring because that'll be universal for both key passive setups. And then I have just Limitless Rage here, but I could probably put that on my on the Amulet instead and probably get more value out of that, actually. But anyway, actually, I would probably actually switch these around now that I'm thinking about it. I would probably do that. Then just do Edge Masters or doing stuff on the fly. This is how my brain works. All right, I'd probably do that instead. And then I have Rapid as my other one-handed weapon, just more attack speed. Just makes the build flow really just much smoother with both Upheaval casting faster and my lunging strike being very fast. For gems, this could vary a lot. Like, the whole build could vary a lot, like I've been saying like 100 times now. I've kind of went with critical strike damage against vulnerable enemies. It's still not bad. I think the other option might be diamonds for ultimate skill damage, maybe, because if we'll have actually pretty good uptime on Iron Maelstrom as an ultimate. It's not going to be up all the time, all the time for every enemy in the dungeon or whatever, but it'll have a very high uptime though. So this could be an option. Otherwise, I think for at least this build, there's not much else here. I mean, basic attack damage is not. I mean, I am using lunging strike pretty frequently, but I don't think that beats out diamonds or emeralds. The other option could be this, you know, critical strike damage versus crowd control enemies, but I'm not always crowd controlling every enemy. You know, they might be slowed at least if I hit them when they're healthy, whatever, the hamstring. So they'll be slowed when they first hit enemies, but I think overall Emerald seemed to be the best choice, at least for me, for the weapon slots. For armor, I'm still going to go with damage reduction while fortified. This build should be fortified very, very frequently. There should be an extremely high uptime on fortify. The other option could also be damage reduction while control impaired, but otherwise I don't really think much else would be very good for barbarians. Maybe rubies for max life if you want to really scale the fortify even higher, but I value the damage reduction a bit more than just the flat health. For jewelry, I think this is going to be the biggest flex is the resistances. If I really need a specific resistance, I think I'd rather just swap these out for whatever one I need. Like if I'm fighting the Beast and Ice boss that has like a bunch of cold damage and I need cold resistance, then I'll probably just throw on some cold resistance gems and use the potion to get even more maximum cold resist for the elixir duration. So I could maybe flex out these gems if I need to, for if I'm fighting like a specific boss or something. If I'm fighting like Uber Duriel at like level 100 or whatever, I'd probably want to throw on some emeralds for poison resistance or something like that. So I have diamonds in here for now, just as a catch-all for all resist. But there's a decent chance I'll want to just swap these out for whatever resistance I might need for a particular boss or whatever. So yeah, and then onto the more fun stuff, which is the vampire powers. So the way this works is you can pick up to 5 at a time, and you need the certain amount of like sigils, and you can attach, I think, up to 5 sigils per armor piece. Your helm, chest, gloves, pants, and boots. You can like use an item to like clear all the sigils, so you can like reapply them. So you don't need to like farm a new item, and the sigils can be like applied at will from like some item in your inventory. So there's a lot more like agency compared to like the malignant hearts and like the colored sockets in season 1. So the ones I'm going to go with is Anticipation. So this gives you 20% ultimate skill cooldown reduction, and your ultimate skills gain 12% increased damage for each nearby enemy affected by your damage over time effects. So this actually kind of is neat because it'll work both with two-handed sword expertise, or if I used Berserk Ripping is an option as well for bleed as a damage over time. But also if I end up using Hellhammer, and I actually think it's good, I think it might be good, then that is Burning, which is damage over time, which actually would work with Anticipation. So I am... I'm leaning into Hellhammer. I'm really hoping this feels pretty strong, so I'll have to give it a try myself and see how it goes. But that ultimate skill cooldown reduction is going to feel pretty nice. Since Iron Maelstrom already has a 45-second cooldown reduction, which is even lower than the other 2 ultimates for Barbarian. And then we also get the 1 second reduced cooldown every time we weapon swap. And every time we swap, I'm going to be weapon swapping on basically every single attack that I have. So the cooldown would just be so low that I can hit it for basically any elite pack, any boss. I can absolutely have Iron Maelstrom up when I need it. The second vampiric power I'm going to try out is going to be Hectic. I don't know why I stuttered there. For every 5 basic skills you cast, one of your active cooldowns is reduced by 2 seconds, which is even more cooldown reduction because it doesn't say non-ultimate skill. So it could be any of your cooldowns. So any of these. And with the amount of attack speed that we'll actually be able to get, we're actually going to be able to use 5 lunging strikes pretty fast with some Paragon stuff that got buffed. And also, I think there's a vampiric power here. Yeah, the Moonrise power. So hitting an enemy with a basic skill grants you attack speed. Fancy that. Stacking up to 5 times. And upon reaching max X, you gain Vampiric Blood Rage, which you gain more basic skill damage and movement speed for 10 seconds. So we're going to try and keep this up for basically as much as possible. I'm hoping we can kind of have permanent uptime on this. With the amount of attack speed we have on a higher level character, we can just stack this very fast, and this will even reduce the cooldown because of Hectic. We can just do like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's like boom, reduce cooldown, and then we'll have this, which will scaling our movement speed, and we'll hit really fast, and it's gonna probably feel really fast to play. So I'm excited to try this out. We're going to have Sanguine Brace, so when you kill an enemy, fortify for 6% of your base life, and while you have more fortify than half of your maximum life, you gain an additional crit chance. So this is going to be one of the many sources of additional crit chance outside of items that I'll have set up for the build. A lot of it comes from the Paragon tree, or the Paragon board. And then the last one I'm going to try out is going to be Undying. This one seems extremely powerful. So casting skills heals you for 3% life, and double this while you're below 50%. Assuming Lunging Strike counts, Yeah, that's a lot of life to heal on hit. That's a lot. There's even talks of like using frenzy instead for even more attack speed, and then running the amulet, the unique amulet, whichever it's called, battle trance, for even more maximum frenzy, ranks of frenzy, and attack speed, and just being able to heal like your entire health like instantly. And as long as you don't get one shot, you can probably just instantly heal any attack in the game. That might be a fun kind of almost meme like healing build where you literally are unkillable assuming you don't get one shot by something. So that would be pretty neat. So this seems absurdly strong. So we'll see how this goes. Um, there's a few other ones that could be neat. There's some stuff with like the vampiric curse effect. One of them I thought about trying out is the one that turns you into the cloud of bats and you become unstoppable. Also inflicts vampiric curse to enemies. There's some stuff here that could be neat to try out, but these 5 are going to be the big ones. I think Anticipation, Hectic, and Moonrise, and Sanguine Brace, just like all of these. I mean, honestly, all of these just feel so strong that I'm going to be hard pressed to not take some of these because the amount of attack speed, cooldown reduction, healing, and fortification is just like helps with your damage, your survivability, and your healing. I mean, what more can you ask for? I'm already dragging on super long. This video's I can't stop myself from talking. I'm not going to go over every single node in the Paragon tree, but just going to go over some big ticket items. So the 5 glyphs I'm going to be using are going to be Mortal Draw. This gives us weapon swap damage and also another source of critical hit chance when I weapon swap. I'm going to pick up the Ire Glyphs for every 5 strength to gain damage while berserking, and that's going to combo into the where is this? Is it this one? No. Where is it? Is it this one? Here we go. Blood Rage. So this has been reworked. So killing a bleeding enemy has a chance to grant berserking, and then your damage dealt is increased by 25% multiplicatively of the total amount of your damage while berserking bonus. Basically, your damage while berserking is now a multiplier that will scale your damage. So I've tried to get as much damage while berserking from the Paragon tree, and even in the stats section, I've tried to get all of the damage while berserking offensive stats where I can get it. So we really want damage while berserking for that extra multiplier. On top of the fact that berserking itself is already a multiplier bonus. At least the base effect should be a multiplier bonus. So that is very strong. So anyway, this Ire Glyph helps with that, which gives us increased damage while berserking for every 5 strength, and then also we get the extra 10% reduced elite damage while we are berserking, which we should be berserking very, very often, basically permanently. Then we got Might. This gives us bonus to all magic nodes, and we also gain the increased damage while wielding 2-handed weapons. So we kind of picked up just a bunch of the magic nodes here. Again, even more damage while berserking in here, and more damage while berserking here. More damage while berserking here, and then I also picked up the Carnage node. This has been buffed to be twice as good. It used to be up to 8% critical, or up to 8% attack speed, but now it's up to 16% attack speed while berserking, and we'll have a bunch of sources of critical strike chance, both on gear and some, across our Paragon board and some other stuff, like the Vampiric Power that I talked about earlier. And then the last couple glyphs are going to be Blood Feeder. This gives us another 5% chance to crit against bleeding enemies. And we picked up some other rare nodes on the way so that we can also pick up Fallout's Technique. I didn't use this previously, but I'm going to give this a try now. So damaging enemies with a one-handed weapon. So basically, when you use Lunging Strike, it increases your critical hit chance by 1% up to 8%. And so we could have just a baseline extra 8% crit chance just by using a bunch of Lunging Strikes, which we will be using a bunch because of things like Hectic and of Moonrise. So we'll have very high attack speed with a lot of very easy ways to stack things relating to basic skills. I'm curious to see how effective that's going to be in the live game. And then the last thing we pick up is going to be Decimator. This used to be Dog Water. It was like lucky hit chance to vulnerable enemies. That it was terrible. So they've been reworking it now. So each time you make an enemy vulnerable, your damage is increased by 10% for 5 seconds, and which basically just means when you use Steel Grasp, you get a 10% damage bonus. Nice. And then overpowering a vulnerable enemy grants you additional 10% bonus. I don't spec into overpower at all in this build, but it's just a freebie. So that it's also on the way to the the glyph socket I ended up going with here, which is going to be Undaunted. So you gain increased damage while fortified, and you gain an actual 10% damage reduction the more fortify you have. So yeah, that's the Paragon board. Let's pick up the useful rare nodes, and that's gonna be the 5 glyphs I'm gonna use. Yeah, like I mentioned already, I have all the stats. This might change again, like I said, but yeah, that's it. Pretty much it. Kind of a long one. Can't stop myself from talking about everything. Again, final caveat: this is a theory craft. I haven't been able to test it in game because season 2 is not even out yet. It's gonna be out tomorrow. I'll be playing on server launch. You can catch me over on twitch.tv/KiraDext. For that, I'll be playing on server launch. So it's 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 a.m. Eastern. I will be playing. I might be slightly late to the server launch, but I'll be able to play basically right after the servers go up, and I'll be able to happily deal with all of the server lag because the servers are probably going to get dumpstered for like at least a couple hours. So that'll be fun in a roundabout way. So yeah, link in the description for both the stream and for the build link if you want to have something to reference. But again, it's just what I'm going to try and do, and hopefully it works out, and we'll see how it goes. So anyway, that's enough rambling for me today. I hope you have a phenomenal season 2 start if you do end up playing it. Even if you end up playing it, a little bit down the line. Even if you don't play tomorrow on Tuesday. Otherwise, thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.